Hello. So, in our final lecture on how patriarchy functions at its various levels, we're going to look at how patriarchy is embedded in the words we use, as well as in the stories we tell. And of course, both words and stories then influence this other level, because after all, what is the media but a conglomeration of words that tell a story? And how patriarchy is just communicated. When we speak of the mass media, we're speaking about patriarchy being communicated to a mass audience. So we begin this lecture by looking at what I characterize as linguistic and narrative patriarchy. So here we are on 3 and 4, and then we will get into number 5. And we start with a definition provided by the United Nations. Language is a tool. Poets and propaganda know this. And of course, now we're going to be focusing on one particular victim, one particular subset of victims of this kind of language, and that's, of course, women. Look how even when we talk about narrative linguistics, remember not all linguistics and narratives are just based on words. An image like this communicates a fair deal about the construction of gender. The girls' room, quote unquote, is that where people who wear skirts and have braids go to, and if somebody can lift them, pump iron, there's the other room for you. And if you're curious, what does a men's room look like? Just so you guys, if you're just curious women, this is apparently what a men's room looks like at one particular, I assume it's a nightclub. So a card like this more or less is embedded with linguistic patriarchy. The words we use, such as slut, okay? Let us think about this. Think of what does the word slut connotate? Okay? What is the male equivalent of a slut? And often it would be a term such as a player. Now notice the difference, right? A player is what? Somebody who plays. What? A game. And wins. What? A variety or multitude of women. Okay, in this case, women can be like bowling pins, women could be like goals, touchdown. Okay. A woman is not described as a player, though. If a woman partakes in the same act, she is considered a slut. Look at this following map, which is laying out the various area codes in which Ludicrous claims to have hoes. Now, if we think about a comparison, let's say a female had a similar song. In other words, there's no kind of term to ridicule or diminish Ludicrous for having hoes from coast to coast across time zones, right? Now, let's just take the example of, I don't know, any female artist would do. Let's just take pick Adele. What if Adele's newest hit was I have a cock on every city block? What would the immediate reaction be? What would Adele be called? Well, she would be called that previous term. She would be called a slut, a skank, or you name it, okay? And that double standard, that's what patriarchy is. Patriarchy is just a system of, it's a system that constructs reality. Okay. And that kind of double standard that I described to you, that is one of the ways patriarchy is lived. Okay. It's that what is expected of women is completely different than the expectations of men. Let's look at Ali G referred to patriarchy. Now, for those of you who don't know who Ali G is actually a character played by the actor Sacha Baron Cohen. You might know his other roles or avatars such as Borat and Bruno, and there's a couple more I can't remember. But anyway, in this lecture, even though he is playing a fictional character, even in his fiction, he is revealing elements of patriarchy. Okay. So the first one's been taken off YouTube. Luckily, I downloaded it. This is another question. Can I share it with you? Yes, I can. And hopefully the sound will work. Okay, so let's watch the film.
Check this out, yo. I is here with my main woman, Naomi Wolf. She be well important feminist and has like written enough books about that kind of stuff. Do you think that women should have equal rights in the workplace?
Yeah, do you?
Well, ain't there the problem that if they start getting them there, then they're gonna start asking for them at home?
Yeah, and what's wrong with that? Research has shown, this is my favorite statistic in misconceptions, that the most erotic thing a man can do for a woman is the dishes, is housework.
Is do the dishes?
Well, after she's had a child.
I thought it was the figure of eight. The figure of eight when you...
Well, that's good before... Yeah. Okay, well, that's good, that's good.
All right then, no offense, but if you were so equal, how come even the things that you claim that you is better at men, like cooking, you know, you ain't?
Well, who says women are better at cooking?
All the best chefs in the world is like men, like, you know, Colonel Sanders, the man or woman Ronald McDonald. Them is like a million times better than Wendy.
Yes, a very good question. I mean, I guess I have to say I never claimed that women are better cooks than men. You're right. The great chefs have all been men.
Do you reckon now that women has got more job opportunities than men?
No, I do not.
Because, you know, you've got all the lap dancers, all the woman in the rap videos, whatever, strippers, you know.
A lot of countries in Eastern Europe are collapsing, and women like me, you know, have to sell sex in order to eat, you know, in order to look after their children. And there's nothing sadder.
If you did, you would make loads. I'm not saying I hope you never have to. But
well, thank you for the compliment.
Right.
I appreciate that because I'm almost 40, so that's nice that, you know, I could possibly take to the streets if I needed to. But let me tell you, honestly, how would you feel if you had to sell sex, your sex?
What if people pay me money for sex?
No, honestly, I mean, I know, like,
I always be there every day.
So cool.
I would be late in the office 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 369.
I mean, would you call a woman a bitch? Would you say you're my bitch and expect her to feel really cared for and respected?
Well, with me, Julia, I've got a girlfriend, and I do sometimes call her my bitch, but, you know, in the bedroom, whatever, you know, that is, them words come out, and, you know, she ain't got a problem with it.
Okay. Gee, I'm kind of speechless.
I ain't calling her a bitch, I was calling her my bitch.
My bitch, I'm sorry. Okay, my bitch. Okay, you know, I guess we're just really speaking at cross purposes because I'm so offended by this, I can't even tell you.
Okay, so we'll stop there. So for those of you who don't know, what did Ali G or any of Sacha Baron's characters do was interview people who don't realize that he is playing a character, okay? So Naomi Wolf is a prominent feminist writer. She doesn't know Ali G is being played by a character. She thinks this is a guy is a genuine person with these genuine misogynistic beliefs. Regardless if this is a setup, it's, even in the setup there is, you see how the term bitch is being negotiated. Even Ali G as kind of this faux or fake misogynistic character saying it's okay because I'm calling her my bitch. Nonetheless, what is that? What level of patriarchy is Naomi Wolf taking offense at? It's the use of linguistic patriarchy, or the terms, the words we use, and what they connotate and what they justify. Words matter, in other words. Okay, I'm going to now show you a second Ali G video, and again, it's now following the same kind of stream of thought. Here we go.
Okay. And as I said the first name?
Newt.
Wagwan, Evertonary. I is here with my main man. His name be Newt Gingrich, and him was the leader of the House of Representatives. Is that right?
Yes.
What policies was you famous for introducing?
Well, probably the most famous was welfare reform. We had a system that paid people to do nothing.
So how long do you think people should get welfare?
We set a pretty firm system that says that you can be on the system for about 4 years.
But ain't people just getting into it after 4 years?
Well, I mean, most people we think should actually go to work.
Do you think that people should get more welfare the longer they is on welfare?
No. We don't think that you earn seniority on welfare.
But surely the longer you was on welfare, it shows that you has got commitment. I mean, you wouldn't like it if you was in a job and didn't get a pay rise.
But our goal is to get you off of welfare, not to make it more desirable for you to stay on welfare.
Do you think dads should be forced to pay for their kids?
Yes. If you create the child, you ought to have an obligation to help pay for the child.
What, even after it's born?
Yeah, that's the whole point.
But if you was already paid for the meat, you know, the popcorn, the chocolates, the movie or whatever, the last thing you want to be thinking about when you is getting jiggy is how much is this going to cost me? Makes the whole thing unromantic, innit?
Well, and if you're the kind of bum who's going to walk off and leave your kids, the girl shouldn't be with you in the first place.
So does the Republican Party think that homies should take their girlfriends up the butty?
No, I'm not. Look, some guy who says to me, all I want is fun for one night, and then she has to spend the next 20 years raising the child.
For real?
That strikes me as a pretty unfair bargain.
Do you think a woman will ever be president?
Absolutely.
Ain't there a problem that if there is a woman president, they're going to spend all their time on facials, shopping, and getting new shoes?
I think if you said that to most women who could be president, you'd be surprised how tough they are.
But ain't you worried that the whole cabinet would be like Brad Pitt on Defense and George Clooney on Elf, you know, because him from ER, you know, and you've just got like all these other good-looking geezers and King Dong in the background.
We've already been through it before. I mean, as I said, Margaret Thatcher was probably one of the 3 best prime ministers of the 20th century.
But wouldn't there be a danger that they'd like fall in love with someone bad like Saddam Hussein?
No more than there is for a man.
Yeah, but women, they love bastards.
I don't have any. I think that's just. I think that's a stereotype. I don't think.
No, but I know from me experience, the worse you treat them, the more they want you. And he could be like doing bad things to the US all the time, and shit. It would just get more and more horny.
I don't think that kind of woman would get to be president any more than some guy who's easy to push around. People who get pushed around easily don't get to be president.
But ain't there the problem that if he declares war, she'll just start crying and everything?
The kind of woman who would rise to be president, I think, would be very comfortable saying, if you really want to fight, we'll do what it takes.
But not if she was in love with him.
Well,
treat him rough, you get your muff. That's what they say on the street.
I think whoever you dated is probably different than the kind of people who get to be president.
Yo, so big it up. You has heard none of.
Okay, there are so many levels of patriarchy there. Where do we begin? So again, even though Ali G is a fictional character, Newt Gingrich is having a real conversation, and Ali G is only representing sentiments that are in fact out there. So first of all, what they're talking about, even though it's in this lecture, they're talking about patriarchy of the state. Okay? And in other words, can a woman become president? Now keep in mind, this was before Hillary Clinton even ran for president. This was as far back as the 90s when Saddam Hussein was still the leader of Iraq. And even in this interview, even though it's fake, it set up a lot of the issues that Hillary Clinton had to deal with when she was running for president. But let's just look at what were the narrative and linguistic techniques, okay? First of all, what did Newt Gingrich say? I bet you if a woman can be president, she could be tough. In other words, be like a man. In other words, when Newt Gingrich is saying this, might seem kind of like inherently progressive, yet there is still a level of patriarchy here. Sure, a woman can be president as long as she can be tough as a man. In other words, as aggressive or quote unquote warlike. And then what did Ali G say? Isn't there the problem if Saddam declares war on the US, Hillary Clinton is going to cry? Now that is an example of media foreshadowing reality, because at one time on the campaign trail, now this is when she was running against Obama in 2008, she did tear up during an interview. And then the critique was, do you want a woman who might cry under duress to be our president? Now, that was the argument made by her detractors. Now, one feminist scholar said, why is that, why in our society do we consider that a bad thing? Yes, wouldn't it be good if a woman cries before thinking about launching a nuclear war? Wouldn't you want somebody who feels empathy and emotion before taking the world onto a path of Armageddon? So you see in the video how that sets up real debates about the patriarchy of the state, okay? But then also let's look linguistically. What did he say? According to Ali G, which we assume is, you know, this fictional misogynistic character. Now, what is he saying is an actual phrase that is articulated, or a notion, or an idea that women like bastards. The more you're mean to them, the more they like you. And then what does he say? You treat them rough and you'll get the muff, okay? Muff being a derogatory term for use your imagination, right? And that is, those kind of sentiments, those kind of words we use are kind of a, you know, a sentiment that kind of condones violence, even violence with your words, never mind physical. So that's kind of what I say. Patriarchy is something that is experienced. As men, we have to learn how to read it, okay? But a woman, like I said, will experience it from the moment she is conscious, okay? So let's continue with looking at the way words shape our perceptions of gender differences. And we left off with, so take Ali G's comment using the word bitch and look at this political cartoon, okay? And just think of how often the word bitch is in song lyrics. Think of terms we use, such as resting bitch face, and think, is there an equivalent for a male expression along those lines? And of course, there isn't. Then we get to this word here. Okay, I want you to look at, because I'm not going to say it, but look at the third line and ask yourself, how would a mistake like this have been made? And my theory is somebody did some kind of Google search or some kind of translation service, okay? But all of those translations are built on algorithms, which says something. When somebody is doing some kind of search to find the translation from the original language, if that four-letter word comes up, that says a lot about how often that word is being used on online discourse. The same accident probably happened for this ramen maker. Okay, I'm not sure what the original word would have been, but somehow it came up like this. So in other words, these words aren't just articulated, they live on in cyberspace, they live on in our algorithms. And if you see, when you make a protest sign like this, what are you protesting? You are protesting linguistic patriarchy. You are protesting the words that are meant to demean. If we look at the word slut, just a play on kind of an insult. Think of the word cougar, not just our unfortunate name for our mascot and the web platform in which you're viewing getting class material. Look at, I mean, this is Time magazine, using this word. Okay, so what is supposed to be in the style? So this is what we could say patriarchy of the media as well. It's not just, because a lot of patriarchy is nested within each other. So here's the linguistic embedded in the patriarchy of the media. And so that Catherine the Great emerges as Cougar the Great in this case, all right? And again, just think about it. If a man had many lovers, think of Henry VIII. What is he called? How is he insulted? And there is no real term, but with Catherine the Great, she emerges as Cougar the Great. Oh, and by the way, which also reminds me of an urban legend. Some of you might know it, some of you might not. If you don't know it, there's no need of me telling it. Actually, now that I mentioned it, I'm sure you're going to Google it now. So let's just bring it up and get it over with. The myth is, I remember hearing this in high school as a fact, in the high school history as a fact, that after having all these lovers, she was no longer satisfied, and then tried to achieve her satisfaction by becoming intimate with a horse, which is the most diplomatic way of trying to explain this historical urban myth. And no, she died just of natural causes. That legend was probably spread by her detractors. Of course, she's a powerful woman, she'll have enemies. But again, we even see it in these kind of political, this kind of comic script here about Catherine the Great. That myth lives on. So let's look at another example of linguistic patriarchy. Let's look at the following video. Okay, so watch the following. And then see what's the point of me showing you this.
So some of you have probably seen this video already, but I am trying very hard not to give a fuck like this man. So I show you the video anyway. Damn! Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Look at all these cobras. And he does not even care. It's like he's just doing his job. And he's... Oh my god. What kind of balls does this man have? He's just... Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. This man does not give a two shit flying fuck. Two shit flying fuck is looking for this man, and this man is nowhere to be found. But I bet if you look up the dictionary for I don't give a fuck, you will see this man face there. This man does not give a fuck. It's like God created this man on a busy day and he forgot to put fear in his heart. There is no fear in this man's heart, only blood. This man has the biggest balls ever, not like human balls. I bet he has like big, gigantic, invincible dinosaur balls in his pants. They are invincible, that's why you cannot see them. You people think I don't give a fuck. This man does not even know what fuck means. If this man was on the snakes on a play movie, the movie will finish in 5 seconds. 5 seconds. The movie will finish. Look how he is tossing the cobras aside like he does not even care. There are like 100 cobras in this pit and not a single one fuck was given by this man. This man has 99 problems, but a cobra is not one. He is handling the cobras and putting them aside like they are potatoes. Like, look at this, potato number 1, potato number 2, potato number 3. Imagine this guy going on a date with a girl and the girl is like, so what do you do for living? And he's like, I toss cobras aside. How fucking awesome is that answer? This man's heart is made out of concrete. The guy has balls, man. He's not even showing any sign of fear. He even faces the cobras like there's nothing happening. Look at this. Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh my fucking god. Oh my fucking god. Did you see that? The cobras nearly fucked up his face. His face was facing the cobras like this. They nearly fucked it up. This guy is fucking insane. And look at the cobras just standing there like, don't touch me, man. Don't fuck with me, man. Don't touch my sister. Why you have to touch my uncle? cousin alone. Leave my cousin alone before I fuck you up. And this man still don't care. And how the fuck is he going to get out of that pit without like stepping on a cobra or something? I am such a complete vagina that no amount of money will ever make me do this job. Fuck that shit. I have big balls, but they are not this fucking big. No fucking way. This shit is bananas. This is some banana shit going on right there. I will never ever go near this shit. This is bananas. Some banana shit right there. Fuck this shit. But yeah, the man has big balls. I will give him that. You take your balls and go. I don't want them. Bye-bye.
Okay, so this video, just look at it. It's 3 minutes and 51 seconds long. Over the span of 3 minutes and 51 seconds, how did this person on the video use a particular word, a metaphor, to communicate bravery? And you got it. He said it 8 times. Balls. 8 times balls. 16 in total. All right. Now, when he said, I do not have the courage to do the job that this man does, what did he say? I am such a complete vagina. Now, patriarchy would dictate the words we use. How is it that balls got associated with bravery and vagina with cowardice? Now, if you think logically, just from a biological perspective, will a man ever know the pain of childbirth? No. In theory, given the pain a woman endures during childbirth, shouldn't the vagina be the symbol of bravery? In other words, during Private Ryan, when the first man, kind of crosses the beach, on Normandy Beach, shouldn't the characters in that film be saying, look at that guy's great vagina? There it should have been, yeah. Actually, I always say this story. One of my students did mention once, in fact, that a man does know the pain of childbirth. And I remember asking, how could that be possible? And he goes, yeah, Prof. Whenever you're kicked in your balls, for a brief moment, you will feel the pain of the same pain a woman feels during childbirth. And I was like, okay, point taken, but will you ever, in a man's life, will you ever be kicked in your balls for 8 hours straight while a football comes out of your penis? And of course not. A man will never feel an equivalent pain. But and you might say, okay, fine, that's just in English, right? Maybe what you're saying is in English, but no. This notion of balls equating courage. Let's look at other examples that demonstrates just not an English phenomena. The patriarchy, crosses over languages. Here, look at the following. Okay, in the following, right? Look how in Spanish, how cojones, right? To be brave means you have 2 cojones. Okay? To be scared means you are without them. If you're bravely, you're without them, cowardly without, okay? Now, I won't go any further than this, but in Madrid where I lived, or in Spain in general, if you want to curse, if something doesn't go your way, you're generally displeased, you use the Spanish equivalent of the C word, okay? So there you go. So here we just see it in the examples of, how are these spies brave? Well, there's more braver than James Bond because they have bigger, what? Whereas in this same, let's then look at that other word, because even a word like this has a history. It was, you'd be surprised, yeah? And not only this word, but then I'm not going to show the following video. The following video, of course, you could watch it on your own, but it is a partisan video. Okay? And so I try to stay away from kind of polarizing partisan issues in class. Okay? But see, for 10 minutes, what was this debate about? This was when candidate Trump was running for president. Okay? And when he said, grab them by the blank. Again, what did that generate? The choice of words he used, right? Anyway, you can watch that video on your own. But think about this term. Think of a term spinster. Even words like this, they have a history. And think of the double standard. A man who's unmarried after a particular age, think of George Clooney, was constantly referred to as a eligible bachelor. What is a woman referred to? An old maid, an old hag, a crazy cat lady, a spinster. Okay? And you have to realize, just like the previous word I show you, they all have a history. In other words, it's a history of patriarchy. Spinster was just somebody who spun wool or spun the yarns and threads, right? It could also have been a man. By the early 18th century, it became that term, a derogatory term for a woman who's unmarried. The same word for a courtesan over time became associated with becoming a prostitute. The mistress was just a term that was the opposite of master. It was a sign of respect. By the 17th century, it became kind of a reference to a woman you have besides your wife. A wench was just for a young female unmarried. By the late 14th century, it becomes an insult. Okay. A tart was an abbreviation of the term sweetheart. By 1887, in other words, here the history could pinpoint the day. Okay. It's becoming now a female of immoral character, a prostitute. I don't recommend you guys, if you write, I love you, my tart, on Valentine's Day, and just say, oh, I meant it was a contraction of sweetheart. I don't recommend that. Okay. A hussy was a contraction of the word housewife. And by the 17th century, it became an insult. By the way, other words you might realize, a bride in Old English was just simply the word for a cook. In other words, when if you were a man and got married, and somebody congratulated you for getting a new bride, it was, congratulations on your new cook. And the madame, again, like a mistress, the equivalent of sir. But then you see historically, and so what are we seeing as a pattern? It becomes an insult, okay? And speaking of even the scientific or more proper term for this word, what does a vagina literally mean? It was a Latin term, of course, developed by men. The vagina was where a Roman took his gladio, where we get the word gladiator, the short sword. What was the vagina? The sheath in which he put the gladio in. And, sorry, that was an unfortunate gesture. But yeah, the sword in which is the sheath. The sheath itself was known as the vagina. In other words, you see the mentality there. What is a vagina? The place where the man puts his gladio or sword. That's all linguistic patriarchy, the words we use. And then if we do a comparison, notice this, if I put them side by side, how the entire male category compared to the female category, the entire female category has negative connotations, not the male category. Look at this cartoon here. Notice there's no word for a male prostitute per se. No word automatically comes to mind. Yeah, there is the term gigolo, but that wasn't used in this case. I know for madame, there is the word pimp, okay? But then that almost kind of came into a positive word. Think of the entire MTV show, Pimp My Ride. In other words, the status of your ride attaining pimp-like qualities. Something positive, right? Yeah, so there are no equivalents, right? And so, yes, look at all these terms, whore. You have to create a new word, man whore. Barney Stinson on How I Met Your Mother, in one episode, before he got the woman, she said, I heard you're a man whore, and thus I want to sleep with you. Cougar, again, no equivalent of a cougar. A tramp stamp. What is the equivalent of a male tramp stamp? There isn't. The walk of shame. Okay. Referring, what is the male equivalent? Yeah, for men, they don't care. For them, it's a walk of fame. They're walking happy, giving somebody high fives and all that. Yeah, for them, it doesn't really matter. Right? And think of the term MILF. And in terms of history, I can give you the recent history of the term MILF. It was a term popularized by the film Apple Pie. I always make that mistake, American Pie. You know, if you've seen it, you know why I make that mistake. In American Pie, I think, what was the character's name? The funny one. Anyway, his mom was known as a MILF. Now, what does a MILF suggest? Read between the lines. Despite the fact that she's had a variety of children, despite the fact that she is a mother, I would still ILF her. She is still ILF worthy. Now think, is there an equivalent for a DILF, right? No, not historically, not as long as the term MILF, okay? In other words, think of if there's a dad and if he's ILFy, you just call him a man, right? Narrative patriarchy is, you see, there's still these words we're using, but now you combine them into a story. You see, porn movies and Disney films both tell narratives, both tell a story, right? So what is this woman saying? Where the hell is my Prince Charming? And what is this boy asking? Where the hell is my insatiable whore? Think about when we call young girls princess, okay? What kind of story we're telling them, and this is a sarcastic image of a 21 creative toys to teach children harsh life lessons. You see, yeah, little girls don't naturally want to play with pink dolls or a pink dress. We teach them. This is the construction of gender. So, this is what Walt Disney teaches men about attracting women. But let's also kind of invert the way narratives work by looking at the following video.
Cinderella were a guy. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Cinderfella. He lived with his evil stepfather and ugly stepbrothers. One day, his stepfather got an invitation. But Cinderfella's ugly stepbrothers were jealous of his beauty. They didn't want Cinderfella to go, so they tore apart his suit. Cinderfella wept and wept. Suddenly, a fairy godfather appeared. He gave Cinderfella a new suit and glass loafers. When Cinderfella arrived at the ball, the princess asked him to dance. Oh no, his curfew! The next day, the princess sent her servant to search for Cinderfella. When Cinderfella tried the loafer on, it fit perfectly. So the princess married Cinderfella. And they lived happily ever...
Hi, I'm Elena Favilli.
And I'm Francesca Cavallo.
Recently, I realized that not a single story I read growing up featured a girl who took her destiny in her hands and made something on her own without the help of a prince, a brother, or a mouse. By the time girls reach elementary school, they already have less confidence than boys. Why is that? They say that if you can see it, you can be it. But what happens when you never see someone like you making the headlines? What happens when all that you see around you is movies, cartoons, books, TV shows, dominated by men?
We decided we had to do something about it.
That's why we created this book.
It's 100 stories of real women who have achieved incredible things despite all odds. Astronauts, chefs, painters, judges, tennis players, extraordinary women who have changed and are changing the course of history in every field imaginable. We call it Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls.
It's the book we wish we had when we were children.
Get it for your daughter, your niece, your friend's daughter. Every girl you know deserves to grow up thinking that she can be anything she wants.
Sorry, those pop-ups came kind of towards the end of the video. I really don't like how YouTube does that. Anyway. So what did these two women try to tackle in creating Goodnight Stories for Little Girls? Was the embedded structural way that patriarchy permeates the stories we tell, the narratives we tell. Okay. Let's look at other examples of kind of, now you might also be wondering why Disney usually has this kind of narrative structure. If you look at this letter from, to a Miss Mary Ford, even could a woman be involved in creating, let's say, Disney stories if she wanted to? No. Even there we see kind of a patriarchy embedded in the workplace, which I would categorize as societal. In other words, the societal is preventing her from creating narrative that might be more sympathetic to women. What's the following trying to do? The following images are trying to subvert the narrative that's often told by these Disney stories. Okay, so here's Snow White, got her Prince Charming, and look what her Prince Charming now is doing, eating chips, drinking beers, watching sports while leaving her to raise the children. I have no idea what the story is referring to, so I can't really comment on it. Okay, Rapunzel, there we go. What was Little Mermaid's fate if she didn't find the charming, well, okay, locked in an aquarium. This is that story with the pea and the beds. I can't remember it, but it's kind of subverting the narrative, if you will. Okay, what would happen to Princess Jasmine without Aladdin? Without her Aladdin, I guess she's become some kind of insurgent fighting off the invaders of Agrabah. Which one is this? Forgive me for not knowing my Disney tales. Okay, I guess this would be Pocahontas. And what is this suggesting? Again, there's that narrative. She's become a crazy cat lady. Okay, well, if you look at this kind of Italian play on the Cinderella story, here's the prince lamenting that Cinderella is gone, but finds the crystal slipper. And what if the story ended this way? He tries it on and says, perfetta, oh, it's perfect on me, and story ends there. Okay. So yes, this is how women are, or girls are, you know, what does patriarchy say? That, you know, you should be wearing the tutu like pink Darth Vader is for boys. Okay, again, this would be an example of the enforcement of patriarchy, the patriarchal narrative. Notice there's one female character in the Avengers and she's posing exactly the same. So I don't know what the, anyway. What are other examples of narrative patriarchy? Think of the case of James Bond. That's a very good example. Okay. James Bond would be, again, considered the quintessential player, right? Eligible bachelor. Not just always get the women. In this particular movie poster, he gets a harem of women, okay? There's not going to be a female James Bond anytime soon. Okay, Ian Fleming's quintessential franchise won't have that. It's hard enough to have a native African-American James Bond. I doubt there's going to be a female James Bond anytime soon because the whole allure of Ian Fleming's 007 series was this charming, seducing, well, essentially, I mean, he's a man whore. I mean, but that's the thing, and it's something to be celebrated. Remember this means of punishment I referred to early. Look at the following, because now we're going to get to narrative, linguistics, and the media, how it comes to the mass media. Watch the following and how it kind of ticks off all three. The following is a segment from a show called 1,000 Ways to Die.
In the 1500s, 1700s, Italy was no different than today. Men and women got married, swore eternal devotion, and then cheated on each other. Today's two-timing puttana, Caterina. Her cuckold husband knew something was going on. So when he had to go on a long business trip, he locked up her grietto in a chastity belt. He didn't want to get VD again.
La prego. The chastity belt would have been worn as a means by which to keep a male or a female chaste. And they pretty much acted as a diaper that went around the body that protected the genital area. Also, they were designed for women. They could urinate and they could have their menstrual cycle.
With hubby away, the wife will play.
No, non posso.
But her lover found Kat's kitty was under lock. And he had a key.
Si firma.
The knife almost killed her. Time for plan B. A combination of olive oil and water allowed the wench to slide out of the chastity belt and her lover to slide right in. For the next few weeks, the cheaters went at it like conigli.
Caterina, guarda, sono ritornato.
But when her horny hubby came back,
allora, non sei felice di vedermi?
He discovered Caterina was a little rusty.
Water causes metal to rust, so every time this woman slid the chastity belt on and off, she made contact with the rusty edges. After contact with this rusty belt, the C. tetani spores were able to penetrate the skin. They produced the potent toxin tetanospasmin, which ultimately led to loss of motor neuron control. She experienced muscle spasms that led to larynx contraction that ultimately led to her death.
There's a lesson here.
Dovrai indossare questa.
Whether it's the 14th century or the 21st, infidelity can get pretty messy.
Caterina, guarda, sono ritornata.
Caterina
sei felice?
Couldn't keep her legs shut. And now her mouth is forever.
In the 1700s, they would make chastity belts to fit the adolescents and put them in it to keep them from masturbating. And they did this actually for well over 100 years until the 19th.
Okay, so what do we have in the following video is this particular show communicating patriarchy. Now, technically, a chastity belt would be a very kind of patriarchal tool. But I want to notice how this video communicated. Okay. What did they call this woman? A puttana, a wench, right? And then notice how they talk about her death. Look what the cheating woman got. She couldn't keep her legs shut, so now her mouth is shut. Most likely, I mean, this is a very male-centered way of telling a story about a woman's death, which we assume, I mean, this probably is loosely based on history, but that just gives you one of many examples, whether it's James Bond to a short clip on this TV show, of patriarchy embedded in the narratives we tell, particularly on the mass media. And so, we are slowly working our way to applying all of this to the Middle East. But again, let's conclude this particular lecture with, again, that word that I referred to earlier. This is an example of patriarchy women face. And now just to show you how patriarchy is a continuum. You see, this is the subject we're going to be dealing with for the rest of the semester, the supposed oppression of women in Islam. But if you look at the person who created this and this entire lecture that I've been giving you, what am I trying to demonstrate is that patriarchy permeates the entire world, and its manifestations might differ according to cultural context, okay? But the structures that patriarch, and notice how I'm using it as a verb, because that's what I want you to do, focusing on the various levels of patriarchy. forces you to ask what active agent or institution is actually implementing or enforcing the patriarchy. Are they religious institutions, state institutions? If it's the state, which body, which politician? And then if we look, is it the words we use? What particular words? Who's using those words? Is it the stories we tell? Who is telling those stories? Is it the media spreading both words or stories? Which media are patriarching? So now let's, the remainder of this lecture is pretty straightforward. It's a collection over the years of advertisements that I have collected that shows patriarchy of the market. Okay. Of course, patriarchy of the market is you use sex to sell, right? Now, in this case of sex selling, how do you use sex to sell? And let's look at the following. So this lecture is pretty straightforward. So you could, we have about a few more minutes. Patriarchy of the market and the media. You see a lot of it, this is symbiotic, right? Look at these books. Now, they're from the 1920s, but you might ask yourself, has anything changed? Okay. Books about how to raise a family. And remember, these are books that are meant to be sold, hence it's a market commodity. And it's also a form of media, a form of mass communication. These are things to be mass produced. Now, if you look at the publishing house, what is eugenics? Eugenics is the ideology that was widespread in the US that calls for the purification of the human race by creating healthy specimens and rooting out the unhealthy. Okay. It's what inspired Nazism and ultimately led to the Holocaust. And look at all these recommendations. And you're going to see this now. How are they communicated in advertisements? Okay, look at this ad. Well, look at cigarettes. Blow in her face and she'll follow you anywhere. Okay. Now, of course, this is an ad from a while ago, but again, let's see if anything has changed.
I love giving blowjobs to sandwiches. I love sacrificing my dignity for a drink. I love sleeping with guys that don't know my name. The pursuit of happiness, just as our forefathers wanted.
My daughter grows up, but she has friends just like these.
The key to my heart? A man that smells like a vagina.
I'd sell my body for a burger. Nothing makes me hotter than watching a guy get his head blown off.
Here for your entertainment.
What goes great with this dish? My butt.
Obviously, my cleavage can sell anything.
When I reach into my designer handbag, you know I'm naked. This shirt looks too good for pants. Peekaboo. Like what you see?
So, let me turn off YouTube. I had students joke that I would forget to do that, so I'm trying to be really good about it. Okay, so what did we see in that particular compilation of advertisement? And how do we explain this? Well, remember we talked about two forms of patriarchy. Patriarchy that is pre-modern and modern. So how do we theorize what we just saw in that kind of very powerful compilation is this. Capitalism is based on mass production. You mass produce products to be mass consumed. Fast food is just a mass production of food for mass consumption in a shorter amount of time. Basically, every single advertisement that we could consider very patriarchal, and one company that was notorious for producing patriarchal ads was the fast food outfit known as Carl's Jr. Okay, and so basically, you have the what is the structure here? Is you communicate patriarchy for the sake of selling hamburgers and whatever Carl's Jr. sells, right? So in other words, these kind of advertisements are very modern forms of patriarchy. They're patriarchy for the market of mass consumption. So in the following lecture, it's pretty straightforward, and this I'm gonna ask you if you could do it on your own. But let me just walk you through it, these ads are pretty self-explanatory. Look at how much patriarchy is embedded with smoking the cigarette. Appliances. At this particular ad for Listerine, you're not being able to find a husband because you have bad breath. Okay. Here we see the spinster, the old cat lady, so to speak. Feminine hygiene products, and you'd be probably surprised, Lysol was once sold as a feminine hygiene product. You know, the stuff you use to clean wooden tables, yeah? And then finally, a coffee ad that condones domestic violence. I mean, look at that. Look at these on your own. Pay attention to the font in these ads, okay? Because this poster that is calling for the stopping of rape is using this kind of very old-fashioned retrograde. And then we see ads. These ads don't stop. There's an embedded hyperlink here you should look at. And these are just various examples. Now, is this just an American phenomenon? No. These are ads all around the world that we could consider patriarchy of the market. Think of the way magazines work. And then here are a couple of ads that you can watch on your own. And then look at the Barbie doll. How the Barbie doll is an example of patriarchy of the market and what a realistic Barbie doll would actually look like. So go ahead, look at these on your own. That's me on campus for an event that was basically raising awareness of the Barbie doll, a Middle Eastern version of the Barbie doll, pens for women's, and then look at just some various songs that have various examples of patriarchy in it, okay? And then the final, what I give you here is just an overview, proper definitions, okay, of how patriarchy works. Okay? And so from this point onwards, we're going to start applying these frameworks to understand how patriarchy emerged in the Middle East and how it evolved. Thank you.